All right, so we started talking about motivation and the biological basis for why you might not have done what you absolutely have intended to do your whole life. You've not done it yet. And there are lots and lots of reasons. I think modern life has got a lot to answer for because we have had a lot of the things that we biologically need to keep us moving on the right track. They've been taken away from us. So if you look at any kind of evolutionary scale, right, modern life is this blink on the evolutionary scale. But suddenly, we don't have to work very hard for our food. I'm talking about those of us who live in places where we don't have to work very hard for our food. Pretty much everybody in these rooms does not have to work very hard for their food. I have to work least hard for my food. And that's a really bad thing. Not only because it means we're not moving around as much as we used to move around. Like the body is made for moving around, right? And it used to be that we were planting a lot of things and we were taking care of things outside, and it turns out there's stuff in dirt, there's actual microbes in the dirt that help prevent us from getting depressed. It isn't just that we're outside in the sunshine and getting vitamin D, there's stuff in the earth that we have a symbiotic relationship with that helps prevent us from getting depressed. But of course we don't have contact with that anymore, and we aren't, thank God, spending 10 hours digging trenches and putting lettuce out. But that's quite a big problem because it means, we talked about this last time, we are in this state of supersaturation with sugar and fat and salt, which are hitting our dopamine receptors, and it turns out that it matters which receptors synaptically are talking to each other, because the dopamine hit can go towards addiction, or it can go towards keeping you motivated, because dopamine isn't actually something that's given to you as a reward after you've had something pleasurable. It turns out that it also has an anticipatory mechanism, and sassafras is doing the opposite of what I need right now. I have no idea what she wants, so we're going to just let her keep doing this. Well, apparently we're not. All right, so we've got dopamine and how we access that dopamine going to different receptors in the brain, and that being really important, because if you're getting your dopamine hit from watching whatever you're watching. I had a great conversation with a writer the other day, and they were talking about, TikTok keeping them up until 5 o'clock in the morning because you just watch one and another and another. And we're so good at storytelling now that almost all serial storytellers understand about there being a cliffhanger or a hook or an open loop. People call it different things, but there's something that makes you go to the next one because you've got this question that's been asked, something that's been posed, and you need to find that answer. You're driven to find that answer. So it turns out that if you are using that to get your dopamine hit, you're actually taking yourself on a depressive route. But there's something else that you can do. There's a string of things that you can do. There's all the really, really dull stuff that the motivational speakers tell you about, which all turn out to be absolutely true, that regular exercise and good diet, and we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep going. Come on. Brat. This is the little brat who is making my life hell. She's very lovely. We're talking different languages at the moment. So yes, the dull stuff like eating well and getting enough sleep, and God help us all. I lost my thread. Am I going to start again? I'm 4 minutes in. No, let's keep going. Let's not deal with perfectionism there. So, what can you do to get your dopamine track on the right track? One, understand that your brain is trying to push you to achieve certain things. Your brain wants to give you the energy to be able to go chase the lion at the moment that you need it. So what happens is that as you anticipate a reward, not get the reward, as you anticipate the reward, your brain releases the dopamine. It's right before you're about to achieve something, you get the dopamine hit, so you've got the extra bit of energy, so you can do the extra thing that you need to do to go and like hunt down whatever you're hunting down. So how do we do that as writers? How do we do that in the modern world? This goes back to something we started talking about very, very early on. You have to understand certain things about yourself psychologically. Are you a carrot or a stick person? So if you're a carrot person, what you want to do is you want to go look at that list of goals that you drew up that we talked about last week that nobody drew up. Did you? Did you actually draw them up? I'm speaking to the stick people there. You need to go and look at those and work out how you're going to reward yourself when you meet those goals. The other thing that you might think about doing is do something in a group, because we are a herd species. There's all kinds of great stuff about why we act in groups and how the group influences what you do when there's an emergency. You are likely to follow the crowd because there's a biological basis for you being in a herd that keeps you safe. And there's Malcolm Gladwell is the kind of person who writes about this stuff. Really, really good stuff. So you might want to invite other people into your sphere and talk with them about your goals. Tell them what your goals are. You want to break those goals down into really, really achievable chunks. So that means micro chunks. That doesn't mean I want to write a best-selling series and be on Good Morning America, if that even exists anymore. I don't have television, so I have no idea. You don't want that big thing to be what you talk about your group with. What you want is really achievable things with a timeline. If you don't have that ticking clock going for you, then it can be whenever it happens. And here's the deal. We do not live very long. I do not come from long-lived people. I've told you this before. I come from short-lived people. And I come from people who mostly, they keep their faculties. But I've been around other people. My father-in-law had Alzheimer's, and it was very, very fast. Once we saw the symptoms, it was very fast. And so I look at my life and I think, all right, I'm this many years old. How many more years of decent brain do I have? How much can I get done in a day? What does that day look like? And you have to really, in addition to having that big goal of, I want to write books and make my living as a writer, you need to break that down into what you can do in a day and have that achievable thing be something that you reward yourself for if you are a reward person. So tell people what it is you're going to do. Tell that group, that trusted group of people, what your goals are, and then report back to them. It turns out that getting positive feedback, that positive feedback loop is really good for the dopamine receptors that we are trying to target. So in your group that you're going to build now, if one of your group members comes to you and says, I did it, I wrote 4 paragraphs, my goal was to write 4 paragraphs, your job is to go, fucking A, yes! Because that will actually give them part of the hit and take us on the path that we want to go on. If you're a stick person, then you can put something out there and you can make yourself accountable to your group with that deadline, knowing that if you don't hit that deadline, you won't get that. Good, you did it. You're not going to get that. Now, we want to train the stick people out of being stick people if we possibly can, because we want to train ourselves. I'm a stick person, obviously. We want to train ourselves to getting that natural high from the brain that is anticipating the reward of having achieved something. And so you want these goals, everyone has heard about this SMART acronym. You want these goals to be broken out into things that are achievable and time-bound, that you report to your fellow team members, that you check in and you report to them what you achieved. If you didn't achieve it, talk about why you didn't achieve it. You need people that you really trust. Talk about why you didn't achieve it. Did you sabotage yourself? How did you sabotage yourself? How are you going to set your day up so that 1,000 words a day that you want to write, 2,000 words a day, 3,000 words a day? I mean, of course, there are the people who write 10,000 words a day, and more power to them. I hit, I think, 9 one day, but then I didn't write for 2 days because I crashed afterwards. That is not my speed. Find your speed, find that sweet spot, make it your priority. And then I talked a little bit about this before. I worked for somebody who was a self-made billionaire, came from a middle-class background, raised enough money to found a hedge fund, and then once they'd made billions, decided they wanted to find a cure for cancer because their sister had breast cancer, eventually died. And they built an entire firm that was a computational biochemistry specialty firm that they funded with their billions, and they taught themselves from the ground, they taught themselves computational biochemistry because their goal is to find something about protein folding, something really, really about basic science that's a foundational thing for science. And how did they do that? They did that partly as a function of how their brain works. They, I think, would have no problem with me saying that their autism was an absolute plus for them, because the hyperfocus that comes with certain kinds of autism was something that allowed them to drill into something and not see anything else around. But what I learned from this person, what they showed me, they didn't ever say this, but what I took away from being around them was the way that they got that done was to do that which only you can do. There is something in the world that only you can do. And if you're a writer, you're the only person who can tell your stories, the only one. Doesn't matter how many portal series have been written. If you have got a portal stories, thank you, don't barf on me. Who knows? If you have got a portal story in you, only you can write that. There's no one else can write what you can write. And what does that mean? Do that which only you can do. Well, depending on where you are financially, you can hire someone to come in and clean your house. All right, so you can't afford to hire someone to come in and clean your house. How clean does it really need to be? This can get you into a lot of trouble. Believe me, it can get you into a lot of trouble. But having been somebody who had a full-time job that was a crushing full-time job, I spent an entire day of one of my days off cleaning my apartment from one end to the other. And we're at 13 minutes. And I was probably in my 30s before I realized, you know, I actually don't care. I actually don't care if it's dusty. What the hell? It's always going to be dusty. So look at your life and look at how you're spending your time and look to see whether or not there's anything that you can outsource that is not detrimental to your health. So, for example, don't do what I do. Don't live on frozen meals for a few years because it's not good for you. It's not good for the dopamine. It saves time, but there's a cost to it. And you're going to have to do that cost-benefit analysis about what it is that you can outsource or not do for now without it harming you. So you free up that time for yourself. And we're going to start retraining our brains to get on the good dopamine track. If you look up dopamine and motivation, you will see there are plenty of places that will tell you what kind of things that you should be eating in order to boost your brain's dopamine production, what exercise looks like, what kind of sunshine you need. I mean, they are really, really dull, basic things, but it goes to one of my very, very favorite jokes that a comedian told. It was like, I have done every single diet there is. I have done Atkins, I have done keto, I have done cabbage only, I've done intermittent fasting. The only fucking thing I haven't done is diet and exercise. So let's get on a different dopamine track. Hope this is useful.